Welcome to my channel and to tonight's Death Row Dinners video, where I will be eating the last meal of somebody who has been on death row and then telling you how they ended up there. For his final meal, Donald Eugene Harding had orange juice, bacon, fried eggs, and toast with honey. Now, he did actually have 3 fried eggs. I only have a small frying pan and I could only fit 2 of them in. This is the first time I have ever fried bacon and eggs in my life, and that might seem a bit shocking to some. It's not because I can't do it. I just don't eat fried food very often, so it's just not something I've ever thought to do. So yes, that was interesting. I wish I had ketchup, but I don't. So yeah, I mean, I suppose as last meals go, there are definitely worse options. I was going to do the eggs sunny side up, but I was paranoid the yolks weren't cooked, so I flipped. It's not awful, but I definitely prefer grilled bacon. I also dry fried everything, which I'm sure is not how he would have had it. I just got a small carton of orange juice because, again, it's not something I really have. And I will just try a bit for the toast. I'm assuming, because it doesn't specify that he had the toast, it says with butter and honey, so I'm guessing it was honey on the toast. That's what I've done, but he may have had it over the bacon. I got white bread just for a change. So I will finish the rest of my cooked breakfast for lunch, while a different version of me tells you how Donald Eugene Harding ended up on death row. Donald Eugene Harding was born on the 1st of March 1949 in Goodrich in rural Arkansas. His birth was not an easy one. It took place at home, and by the time a doctor arrived to assist, Harding was already struggling for air. This traumatic entrance into the world left him with organic brain syndrome, a condition which causes impaired mental functioning, and he also had neonatal jaundice. His mother claimed that his brain damage was exacerbated by falling from his crib and being hit by a swing when he was still very young. Donald was the second son to be born to his parents. His father suffered from alcoholism and ended up abandoning Donald, his older brother Darryl, and his mother, Michael. As a toddler, he ended up being admitted to the Little Rock Child Guidance Clinic in Arkansas. One of the doctors treating him there noted in his records that his mother was very immature and narcissistic and unfit to care for her sons. Michael remarried to a man named Fred Brown. He contracted tuberculosis, and this led to the family living in a sanatorium for 2 years. This was considered to be a place for specialist healing for conditions such as tuberculosis, among other things. Harding alleged that during his time there, nurses beat and mistreated him. He recalled one particular incident where a nurse forced his head into a toilet as punishment for having wet the bed. Once the family left the sanatorium, Harding alternated between living with his mother and with his grandparents. He eventually settled with his mother and Fred Brown in an impoverished area of Little Rock. Harding recalled witnessing his mother being beaten by Fred on several occasions. His school life was plagued by instances of truancy and behavioural problems. A doctor who had treated both Harding and his brother noted that Harding displayed suicidal ideation from a young age, attempting to slash his wrists at just 9 years old and leaving a note threatening to jump in a river. This same doctor also noticed that Harding's brother, Darrell, seemed to experience none of the problems of his younger sibling. Donald had expressed the desire to kill and choke people, and the doctor noted that it is amazing the degree of psychopathy contained in a boy of this young age. All of these thoughts and behaviours were attributed to the brain damage he had suffered. He also had 3 EEGs during his childhood and early teenage years, these confirming not only brain damage, but epilepsy. Donald Harding was arrested for the first time when he was just 11 years old for joyriding. He was sent to the Arkansas Boys Industrial School, and he spent the next 4 years going between this facility, his home, and the Arkansas State Hospital, which was a psychiatric hospital. When he was 15, Harding was convicted of 4 counts of burglary and 3 counts of grand larceny. These convictions resulted in Harding being sent to the Tucker Unit, a maximum security prison. In 1970, he gained a further conviction for attempting to escape from custody. He made another suicide attempt while he was incarcerated. In 1973, Harding was finally released from jail. After a very brief period of freedom, he was charged and convicted for conspiracy to commit offence or defraud the United States, and was handed a 5-year sentence. In March 1979, he was released once again. Just 2 months later, he was arrested and charged with committing a murder by stabbing in Pulaski County, Arkansas. Whilst he was in jail for this, he managed to escape on September 17, 1979. He then spent the next few months travelling through various states on a crime spree, which ended only when he was caught. The first act of this crime spree was committed just 10 days after his escape on the 27th of September in Chicago, Illinois, with the attempted robbery of a sex worker. On September 30th, he robbed a steakhouse in Omaha. He made off with $83,000 in cash and jewels and assaulted a customer by pistol whipping him. On October 23rd, he was in Knoxville, Tennessee, where he attempted to hold up a bank. His first murder occurred on December 10th in Dallas. He was never actually charged with the robbery and killing of 27-year-old Stanton Winston Blanton in his apartment. The following day, December 11th, he kidnapped and robbed the Baker family in their North Dallas home. On December 18th, he used a fake security badge to gain entry to the motel room of insurance agent Ronald Svetgoff in Waco, Texas. He robbed Ronald, taking his ID and his car, leaving him bound and gagged. He would later use this to feign Ronald's identity. On Christmas Eve of 1979, Harding struck a house in Dallas, tying up the homeowner, Clayton Hall, his wife, and another couple before robbing them. On New Year's Eve, he gained access to the room of Philip Buss in a Salt Lake City hotel. He gagged him, hog-tied him, and robbed him, also stealing his car. By January 3rd, 1980, Harding was in South Lake Tahoe, California. He broke into the hotel room of 35-year-old Charles Dickerson, following his usual MO of gagging, binding and robbing him. Although Dickerson was alive when Harding left him, he was later found by a hotel maid beneath the bed in the room, dead from asphyxiation. Whether or not Harding knew about the death of his last victim, he was undeterred, committing his next robbery on January 5th. He pulled a .25 caliber pistol on Frank Palmer of Sacramento, using cord and ties from his apartment to bind and gag him. He stole Palmer's credit card and, once again, made off with his vehicle. January 6th was a busy day for Donald Harding. Arriving in Bakersfield, California, he inquired about renting a room from a couple named Lyle and Margaret Murphy. He then stole their money and their car. Later that day, he forced Joseph Wallers and his uncle, Robert Stoick, into their hotel room in Los Angeles at gunpoint. Once inside, he hog-tied, gagged and robbed the 2 men. In addition to their credit cards and car, he also stole their luggage. On January 10th, 1980, Harding was driving Waller's stolen car along Highway 191 when it broke down. 39-year-old Gerald O. Huth was also driving along this route. and upon seeing this, stopped to help Harding. Gerald was from Minnesota and worked as a businessman for Univac. Harding repaid this act of kindness by shooting Gerald and stealing his car. It was a while before Gerald's murder was discovered, and his body was found by a farmer in late January in a field near Paso Robles, California. His hands had been tied behind his back, and his cause of death was a single gunshot to the head. On January 21st, Harding had made it to San Diego. He robbed 5 people in an optometry clinic, including the wife of the owner, Shirley Land. He kidnapped her, forcing her to drive him to the house of an unknown woman. By January 24th, he had made his way to Phoenix, Arizona. Whilst there, Harding forced his way into the hotel room of 38-year-old gastroenterologist Alan F. Gage. He bound Alan and used a sock to gag him before robbing him. Sadly, like Charles Dickerson, Alan Gage suffocated on the gag before he was discovered. January 25th would mark the final day of this escalating crime spree. Harding allegedly posed as a security guard to gain entry to the Tuscan motel room of Robert A. Wise. The 35-year-old businessman was using the room as a place to hold a meeting with his corporate sales representative, 33-year-old Martin Colcannon. Once inside, Harding hogtied both men, using a wooden lamp to beat Robert with. He then stuffed socks into Martin's mouth to act as a gag, then shot both men in the head and chest. He then stole Robert's briefcase, which also contained his credit card, and made his escape in Martin's Oldsmobile. At approximately 8 p.m. that same day, he drove to Robert's home. He knocked on the door, and when Robert's wife, Jerry, answered, he inquired as to whether Bob was home. She informed him that he was not, but he should be back shortly. She noticed that he was holding one of Robert's business cards in his left hand, but kept his right hand in his pocket throughout this short interaction. He left the property without attempting to gain access, and it's speculated that the presence of both children and a large dog in the property were enough to deter him. The bodies of Robert Wise and Martin Colcannon were found the following day at the La Quinta Motel. Robert had been tied to a bedpost using a restraint around his neck, and his wrists and ankles had been tied together. He had suffered a fractured jaw and had several teeth missing as a result of being bludgeoned with the lamp. Pieces of the lamp base were found under his body, although the lamp itself had been plugged back into the wall. He had been shot with a .25 caliber pistol at point-blank range, once in the chest and once in the left temple. He died as a result of a bullet severing his spinal cord. Martin was found in the bathroom, similarly bound and shot. His body had been covered with a bedspread and a pillow placed under his head. Whilst a bullet had also perforated his spinal cord, his death had resulted from suffocation on the socks pushed to the back of his throat. His death had not been quick. Both men had been repeatedly bound with a variety of ligatures and a do not disturb sign placed on the door. Harding's fingerprints were found on this, as well as on numerous surfaces within the room. After leaving Robert's home, Harding drove the stolen car to the Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, parking it on a reserved lot at the Sky Dome. The campus security guard, upon noticing this, went over to speak to Harding to explain that he had to move his vehicle. He noted that although the car had Ohio plates, Harding spoke with a southern accent. This made him suspicious enough to contact the police dispatcher to ask them to run the plates. They came back to him with the information that the vehicle was stolen and suspected as having been involved in 2 homicides. This prompted the guard to approach Harding again, arrest him and search him. He found Harding was carrying a .25 caliber pistol, 2 ID cards, one saying security guard and the other special officer, and 2 driving licenses for Mr. Ronald Eugene Harding, one for Texas and the other for Oklahoma. Harding insisted that he was Ronald Harding, but was taken into custody anyway. The FBI office in Flagstaff announced that Harding was under investigation, as he was suspected of involvement in 5 murders, 6 kidnappings, 12 armed robberies and 4 carjackings, spread across Arizona, California, Nevada, Texas, Oklahoma, Utah and Tennessee. Harding was charged with the murders of Robert Wise and Martin Colcannon. When he was asked why he killed some people but not others, he allegedly answered with judgment calls. He was remanded in custody awaiting trial. A ballistics check on the pistol found on Harding confirmed that it was the same weapon used in the motel murders. Traces of blood were found on the clothing Harding had been wearing, and further evidence was recovered from the stolen vehicle he had been driving. In October of 1980, whilst in jail, Harding attacked another prisoner. This resulted in a further charge of dangerous assault by a prisoner. He was assigned a public defender, Dan Cooper. In the lead-up to the trial, Cooper filed over 30 motions to exclude evidence, delay the trial process, and to try to develop an insanity defence. Whilst none of these motions were granted, Cooper had anticipated this and advised Harding that his best course of action would be to represent himself in order to increase the chance of a fundamental error during the trial. This would mean that there would be a reversal of his conviction upon appeal. On March 15, 1982, Harding applied to the state court to allow him to represent himself in the case of the assault on a fellow prisoner. Judge Harry Ginn, who was overseeing the trial for both this and the other crimes, asked Harding for details of his educational background, experiences with the criminal justice system, and the reasons why he wanted to provide his own defence. He also warned Harding that there was a chance he would face the death penalty if he was convicted on either of the 2 murder charges. The court granted Harding's request and appointed Cooper as advisory counsel to him. 8 days later, on March 23rd, Cooper asked to be allowed to withdraw as Harding would be acting on his own behalf. Judge Ginn reviewed the statements given by Harding in relation to his levels of education and experience of the judicial system. He did not make any specific reference to the difficulty a layperson would face in representing themselves, but he denied the request when, despite confirming that it was Harding's wish to act as his own attorney, Harding refused to sign a waiver of counsel form because it included Cooper being assigned as advisory counsel. It is alleged that Cooper then told Harding that the only way the judge would agree to have him removed was if Harding threatened him. Harding purportedly told Cooper to consider himself threatened. On April 15, 1982, Harding again filed an application to act as his own defence. At the same time, Cooper again applied to be recused for ethical reasons. This was reviewed by Judge Druke of the State Court during meetings with Cooper both on and off the record. Judge Druke informed Judge Ginn that Harding had told Cooper that he intended to commit a crime and refused to waive any potential conflict of interest that could arise during the trial as a result of this. Judge Ginn once again spoke with Harding, confirming again that he wanted to represent himself and asking whether he would be willing to accept advisory counsel. Judge Ginn again concluded that Cooper would remain in place as advisory counsel. He was of the opinion that the risk of threats would apply to whomever provided advisory counsel to Harding. On April 27, 1982, Donald Harding was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of theft. The sentencing hearing was held on May 26th. In the lead up to this, the court discussed both mitigating and aggravating circumstances. A psychiatric evaluation of Harding was ordered, but he refused point blank to meet with any doctors. Between the conviction and sentence hearings, Judge Ginn twice offered to reappoint counsel for Harding, but Harding refused. At the hearing itself, the judge once more offered to appoint counsel and to allow more time for mitigating factors to be gathered. Harding remained stalwart in his refusal. The court found 4 aggravating circumstances, and since there were no mitigating circumstances presented, Harding was given the death penalty for both murders. He was also given 2 concurrent 21-year sentences for the kidnappings and 2 consecutive 5-year sentences for robbery. He was later charged and convicted with the murder of Alan Gage. Appeals were made in both 1986 and 1987, but both failed to overturn the convictions. There were queries about Harding's mental competency to stand trial. The appeals court heard that Cooper had moved to have Harding examined to determine if he was indeed competent to stand trial as a result of the organic brain damage he had suffered, and also to determine his mental state at the time of his offences. This was in part to try to build an insanity defence. Harding withdrew his consent to be examined and refused to undergo any kinds of tests. This led the court to rule that, based on how adamant he had been that he wanted to provide his own counsel and his rational and responsive behaviour at trial, he was mentally competent. It did not help that Harding had written a letter to Cooper in which he acknowledged that it didn't matter who defended him, he was going to be convicted regardless. Harding's execution was set for the 6th of April, 1992. He was to be executed within the gas chamber. This would be the first execution within the state of Arizona since the death penalty was reinstated there in 1974. His death was a slow one. He was strapped into the chair at 12:05 a.m. and the 2 cyanide pellets dropped into a bowl of sulfuric acid beneath it. As the gas began to fill the chamber, Harding was seen to make obscene gestures and yell obscenities at the watching Attorney General Woods. Witnesses described the scene, one of them saying, "When the fumes enveloped Don's head, he took a quick breath. A few seconds later, he again looked in my direction. His face was red and contorted as if he were attempting to fight through tremendous pain. His mouth was pursed shut and his jaw was clenched tight. Don then took several more quick gulps of the fume. At this point, Don's body started convulsing violently. His face and body turned a deep red and the veins in his temple and neck began to bulge until I thought they might explode. After about a minute, Don's face leaned partially forward, but he was still conscious. Every few seconds he continued to gulp in. He was shuddering uncontrollably and his body was racked with spasms. His head continued to snap back. His hands were clenched. After several more minutes, the most violent of the convulsions subsided. At this time, the muscles along Don's left arm and back began twitching in a wave-like motion under his skin. Spittle drooled from his mouth. Don did not stop moving for approximately 8 minutes, and after that, he continued to twitch and jerk for another minute. Approximately 2 minutes later, we were told by a prison official that the execution was complete. Don Harding took 10 minutes and 31 seconds to die. This is a very sad case, both for the sheer number of people impacted by the crime spree of one man, but also for Harding. I cannot help but feel that if he had been given adequate support by both the judicial and health systems, then perhaps at least some of these crimes could have been prevented. Whilst not all of his victims were killed, there will be long-term impacts from what they endured. I will leave you with the names of those who died, and my thoughts are with their families, and the people and families of those who were not killed, but still endured torture and torment at Harding's hands. Charles Dickerson, Gerald Huth, Alan Gage, Martin Colcannon, Robert Wise.